While you're listening, go to ArchPodNet.com/members and support our efforts. Let's get to the show.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hello out there in Archaeology Podcast land. This is Dr. Alan Garfinkel. I'm the president and founder of the California Rock Art Foundation. And what we do is we identify, evaluate, manage, and conserve rock art both in Alta California and in Baja California. We conduct field trips, we have trainings, exercise, we do research, and in every way possible, we try to preserve, protect, and coordinate treasures of Alta and Baja California rock art, of which there are many and diverse. We also work closely with Native Americans and partner with them to recognize and protect sacred sites. So for more info about the fabulous California Rock Art Foundation, you can go to carockart.org. Also, I'm open to give me a call, 805-312-2261. We would welcome sponsorship or underwriting, helping us to defray the costs of our podcasts, and also membership in California Rock Art Foundation. And of course, donations, since we are a 501c3 nonprofit scientific and educational corporation. God bless everyone out there in podcast land.
You're listening to the Rock Art Podcast. Join us every week for fascinating tales of rock art, adventure, and archaeology. Find our contact info in the show notes and send us your suggestions.
Hey, Rock Art Podcasters and Archaeology Podcast Network people. Dr. Alan Garfinkel, your host, and this is episode 87. I'm going to be interviewing Joseph Williams, is one of the key founders and principals of Seven Fires Corporation. We're going to talk about what it's like to develop a means of protecting, preserving, and revering a very important rock art site. I think you'll really like this. Hi out there in Archaeology Podcast land. This is your host, Dr. Alan Garfinkel, with the California Rock Art Foundation, and we're honored and pleased to have Joseph Williams, who is the one of the key board members, if not the founder, of the Seven Fires Corporation. And one of the things that they do is to try to protect, preserve, educate, inform, and acknowledge the Native American places of cultural heritage and cultural values. And so we're really honored to have Joseph Williams. I don't think we've ever had anyone of his proclivity, of his particular affiliation on any of the 80 plus episodes that we've had.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Yes.
Well, it's a pleasure. So the way we often get started, Joseph, well, first of all, let's do a little bit of an introduction. How did you and I meet?
Well, by happen chance, I was supposed to have met up with Harold Williams. And
maybe tell people just a soundbite of who Harold Williams is.
Harold Williams is regarded as, he would be, I would say, considered one of the elders to the Kwaisu, Kwaisu tribe in Tehachapi. Now, I never really did get the chance to meet Harold Williams. I'm not, of course, in any way related to any Williams or any of the Kwaisu. And there happens to be quite a few Williams in the Kwaisu, even a Joe Williams in the Kwaisu. And Janice Williams, who I became well aware of by her basket weaving and understanding where basket weaving sits on a cultural level with the natives or Native Americans living here in California. The baskets are a very important aspect of their culture. So I just felt in my heart and mind that it would be good to get to know at least his sister Janice, if I wasn't able to get that chance to meet Harold. So
I was a close friend with Janice Williams, and also, of course, Harold Williams was the co-author of the Handbook of the Kwaisu, and the Kwaisu, of course, are a Southern Paiute tribe, Native California Indian tribe that live in the Tehachapis, but also resided kind of in the edge of the western Mojave Desert, or edge of the Western Great Basin and perhaps even into the far Southern Sierra. In any event, that's how we connected initially. And how did you ever get involved with this particular idea of producing some sort of a nonprofit? And what did that take to accomplish?
I would have to say that it was a matter of calculations. I must profess that I have a geometric design on when it comes to, for example, the moon and how it affects our tides. I've learned that, there's strong evidence that there may be more at play when it comes to plate tectonics and geography, that kind of thing.
Sure. Gotcha. How did you set up the nonprofit? What did it take? What were the steps that you made?
Connecting the dots. How I set up the nonprofit was the steps I took in order is to be close to a particular site that had raised my attention on an astronomical level when it comes to astronomy. So on a scientific level, not a cultural level, but on a scientific, that's what got me to that. Now I've learned that the Kawayasu, they're actually like one of the oldest known tribes in the nation. And stemming from Cherokee myself, having a little bit of Native American quantum in my blood, I have a little bit of an understanding, especially having been raised as well, with that type of awareness of the culture.
So before you jump to that, how did you find out about this site, and how did you gain access to it? Since I understand it's privately owned, or am I correct?
Yes, it's owned by a corporation that's long-standing. I don't see the sense of name in the name of the corporation, but it's
unnecessary.
It's a century old. It's a century-old corporation, and I figured that because of how old this corporation is, I needed some form of way to balance the political aspects of this site being owned privately by such a large corporation.
Privately, yeah.
And I felt that the only ammunition that I would have in order to try to find any kind of ground, or at least a leg up on showing them that we have sincere interest in preserving this space, would be from another corporation.
Right. You had to have an entity, infrastructure, a corporation itself, to sort of go, to interface.
Working with another.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Exactly.
So it was mainly a political move. I ended up investing into 2.5 acres, which is very, very much near, almost within eyesight of this particular site that has, for the most part, probably is what brought me together with Janice and all of this together. Yes. And on an archaeological level, that would be Kakur 273, I believe you've published, and Kakur 1193.
Okay. So what was the intent or the function or the mission of this new, I understand it was new, and how long has it been around, this Seven Fires Corporation?
Well, we've been around for about 12 years now.
Okay.
And as far as where we sit, we have 4 directors. We're actually even looking for even another director. We're represented legally by our attorney who's invested in this corporation as well, as far as time is concerned.
Sure.
The time that we've spent at trying to find a medium whereby we can somehow publish how the importance of these paintings on rocks and the meanings of what these paintings mean. That maybe if we were to educate those who wish to be educated about these places, that would be our form of being able to preserve this space. And it would probably be a good mark as far as the corporation that actually owns it. And that's all I think that they're actually looking for, is some form of stewardship for this place.
So your nonprofit, Seven Fires Corporation, is really attempting to be a steward and
Exactly.
an educator, and one that respects and acknowledges and reveres Native American spiritual, sacred, cultural,
Thank you. Yes.
heritage sites. Perfect.
Now, I've gotten to know quite a few others as well.
Sure. You're a Native American, or at least have some Native American background. Do any of your other board members have Native American ancestry?
Our CFO, actually, our Chief Financial Officer, I think he believes he has some Cherokee quantum, but that quantum can't be proven. Okay. In other words, some of us, we can claim to have that quantum, but not be able to prove it. So that would be the only difference. So I think, yes, one of our directors are, and now that actually you're one of our directors as well, Dr. Allen. And I appreciate you.
Hopefully playing a minor role as I'm stretched and stressed, as you imagine. But God bless you for the opportunity to jump in.
Thank you.
Something as important as this mission and this role, and certainly also that you've taken the time to further magnify and broadcast what you're talking about here, because I think it's extremely important.
Thank you. It's a little bit of a story for me to be able to tell, because, on my father's side of the family, it was more of the, how should I say, gold digging, prospecting, geography and science, and trying to locate deposits, gold deposits, ore deposits, and lay those claims.
Was he a geologist, mineralogist, gold miner?
Exactly. And that's how I was able to actually come up upon this canyon that has our pictographs in it. And so, it's on account of that. Now, in that canyon is, of course, claims as well. There are gold claims in there. So on account of those claims, I know that this corporation that we're speaking of that owns it, they can't even sell that property on account of the claims that are on the property already.
Okay, so there are pre-existing mineral claims?
Exactly. Quite a few of them.
And you took it upon yourself to actually purchase a small piece of ground so that you can steward or manage or protect somehow the resource. Talk about that a little bit, would you, please?
Thank you.
How did that come about?
I guess it was a matter of really trying to manage a strategic idea on how do you talk to a corporation that is so large and old, over 100 years.
Okay.
They just celebrated, their 100-year anniversary, and raising their attention to the importance of this cultural area of this canyon they own. The cultural importance so that, it would cause quite an upheaval on a cultural level, especially. And I've even been told, by both chiefs, if you will, of the Kwaisu that, that this would cause, a definite problem. And that corporation at the same time, has put out whatever threats that they have, even the threat of arrest, should anybody trespass out back in there. And so we feel like that the canyon already has the properties that's needed in order for it to be preserved. Unfortunately, there's a lot of dirt bike go seekers, off-roaders, and it's all illegal.
Okay.
There is no legal off-roading allowed. And all this off-roading is causing a land erosion to the extent to where it's actually jeopardizing the site as far as the sand flows are concerned.
Well, let's leave it at that. Sounds like we're getting into a lot of different elements and characteristics and important themes in this discussion.
Exactly.
I'll catch you on the flip-flop, gang.
Keep this conversation going by joining our members-only Slack team. There's always vibrant conversations going on over there between members and hosts about the topics we're podcasting about and more. Also get access to our back catalog of bonus material and ad-free shows. You get all this for $7.99 a month or less than $80 US per year if you get the annual subscription. Support archaeological education and outreach by supporting the APN. Go to ArchPodNet.com/members for details. That's ArchPodNet.com/members.
Are you listening to this podcast and thinking you'd like to start your own podcast and don't know where to start? Well, Chris Webster, that's me. I'm founder of the APN, and I started podcasting back in 2011. You can learn from my years of experience, and you can do it at your own pace. Head over to propodcastnow.com and click the Learn to Podcast image. My 6 to 8 hour self-guided course will take you from show inception to your first episode, and you'll learn the tools you need to keep it all going and prevent pod fading. That's a real term. You can have access to the materials for as long as you want, and if you stay in for 3 months at least, you'll have lifetime access to the graduates Slack team so you can talk to other people that have taken the course and are managing their own podcasts. Again, head over to propodcastnow.com and click Learn to Podcast.
Welcome back to your Rock Art podcast with Joseph Williams of the Seven Fires Corporation and also your host, Dr. Alan Garfinkel. So, Joe, we were just touching upon some of the political and infrastructural issues that were necessary to sort of deal with a resource. Maybe you should pick it up there. Would that be okay?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I think we were starting to hit on the topic of environmental factors regarding this particular area.
But even before that, we were talking about what was necessary to sort of a precondition to sort of interfacing with a major corporation.
Exactly, yes. And it's, for the most part, a large corporation of this magnitude, I should say, which is almost a Fortune 500 company. There is really no way as just a private citizen to try to reach out and talk to any of those who actually have any actual control, mainly because it's all needing to go through board of directors, just like our corporation.
Sure.
And they're not going to listen to, just your typical private citizen. They're too much into a business level of thinking. And so what I figured I'd do after dealing with Edwards Air Force Base and the sites that are out there, and Edwards Air Force Base. Yes, it's very difficult.
So how did you connect with Edwards?
That actually happened through a Masonic temple that I belong to, a Masonic fraternity in Roseman. And some of the officers, which I happen to be an officer as well in the fraternity, that actually got me in touch with, I believe it was the captain of Edwards Air Force Base that allowed me on to be able to see the sites that are there. But if it wasn't for that affiliation that I have on a political level, for example, with the Masons, I don't believe I would have even been able to really have that chance to see the sites on Edwards. And so they kind of taught me a little bit of a lesson on how to handle the politics of the business of preservation. And so when it comes to a large corporation, I figured the least we can do is at least have property on their fence line, which we do,
right,
and be a corporation ourselves, so that we could speak on an equal level.
So those were two preconditions, and those were met.
Yes.
You had to, I guess, you had to find the piece of ground that even would be available for sale that you could purchase.
That was hard enough in itself, yes. I actually ended up reaching all the way out to, I believe it was Louisiana or something, to be able to get that property. So it was actually an investment property, but what I did is I just simply, turned it over as a corporation, and for the purpose of preserving the site, being that we're so near it, and hopes that we would be the future stewards of this site for this corporation, this larger corporation that I'm speaking of, as a corporation working with another corporation to preserve this site, I thought would be all on good terms to be able to work that way. So that's mainly why we are a corporation.
Yeah. So you had to research and identify property owners and potentially those that would sell to you and that would be physically contiguous or located in such a way that would help in terms of managing, monitoring, conservation, protecting a rock art site, correct?
Correct. And there's only so many.
Very creative. That's a very, very creative way of doing things. I have to hats off to you.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate
that an individual like you and a small group of people can do this is, I don't know if it's nearly miraculous, but damn near.
I could say it was definitely with Janice's help. Janice Williams.
Okay.
The basket weaver there for the Kwaisu, which you knew very well.
Yeah, so she helped?
Yes. If it wasn't for Janice, really on a cultural level, I don't believe that I'd be as close as I am to the Kwaisu if it wasn't for
Now, how did you associate with Janice Williams in the sense of what was her role in terms of trying to structure this relationship or sort of posture the Seven Fires Corporation to help protect this rock art site? How did that go?
I had asked if I may speak with Harold, her brother, and this was just before Harold left, and found that what happened was I missed that opportunity.
Okay.
I had learned that, that Harold wasn't around anymore, and so that I, at that point in time, learned, on Facebook, I believe it is, she had an account, and she had asked me to be friends with her, and I didn't have a single problem at all with that, and we became friends on Facebook originally before we met in person.
Okay, gotcha. So you meet her in person, you have friends on Facebook, but how did it operationally, what did she do or what did you do with her to cause this interesting development?
I had to actually, walk with her, to the museum in Tehachapi, to listen to the stories about Tomokani.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That she told, but the stories that she would tell by her basket weaving, and even the baskets that she weaved or wove, these baskets, they were stories in themselves, and learning really on a cultural level where she sat as an elder.
Gotcha.
I learned about other family members, and that's how we all kind of gathered together with the same effort.
Gotcha. So she allowed you to be immersed in the culture, the native culture, traditional culture of the Kwaisu, and taught you and took you by the hand and showed you the resources that were available, and you began to study it and become a student of the Kwaisu culture. How's that?
Absolutely. If it wasn't for Janice, I wouldn't have begun to learn the language itself through Julie Turner, and actually pick up the media that's necessary for learning the Kwaisu language, which is quite complicated, actually. I'd have to say as complicated as the Cherokee alphabet. As far as the linguistics behind it.
I would never even attempt it. Maurice Zygmunt, who's an anthropologist and really the premier anthropologist to study the Kwaisu and publish on that culture, did publish a dictionary posthumously on the Kwaisu language. But I would never, ever attempt to try to learn to speak or study that language. Others have, and one individual I'm aware of is fluent in Kwaisu, but he's a remarkable individual. Not an Indian, but...
is that a fact?
Did you
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I don't believe I've met him, no.
Yes. He's the Renaissance man of the Tehachapis and has been a writer and a photographer since.
Okay, are we talking about the writer for the paper up there? Because he was actually, now I think I know who you're talking about. The
Yeah,
publisher for the Tehachapi News, I think.
that's correct. And he's always been a
Okay,
person
good.
who performs that particular role.
Yeah, I think his name's John, I think.
Yeah, and John was one of the co-authors of the Kawaii Handbook, of course.
That's really pretty much how we met, you and I, is through
Yes.
this effort.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I just happen to, already have a little bit of knowledge in where this particular canyon sat by a professor, and he
Right.
went on ahead and gave me an official letter that allowed me to be able to see the actual importance of this site. And
Great. And who is that?
this is a professor. I'm trying to get his.
Was that Roger Robinson from the
Roger
Antelope Valley
Robinson.
College?
That's who it was. Roger Robinson from Antelope Valley College. Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and of course he's an archaeologist, anthropologist, professor at Antelope Valley College, and he's been, enmeshed in studies of that Antelope Valley interface area
for like over 50 years.
Many decades. So
I think he said in the letter he started his studies with this canyon in 1968.
Oh my word! So, in any event, so you had the letter, you had a little bit of knowledge and getting more. You were working on setting up the corporation, and
right.
I guess the next, and you were buying the land.
Well, actually,
you were busy.
Well, now we're at thank you, and it is actually it's a busy subject in my opinion. When it comes down to the ethics of what we're trying to accomplish, because we don't want to jeopardize the site by publishing it and letting people know so that it becomes some kind of Disneyland attraction. That's not what we're looking for.
No, that's not what you want.
No, we don't want to, expose the site when it doesn't need to be. But yet, it's such a delicate situation with this particular large corporation that they could choose to destroy it. And so that's all we wanted to do is we wanted to step in to make sure that they knew that another corporation who has the knowledge and is willing to commit to the stewardship to this canyon for that site, that this large corporation can trust us with that job and that task. And
so you had mentioned some interesting initiatives. How did you end up operationally defining or executing against your plan of stewardship for a rock art site? Tell me, help me.
I'd have to say it would be through the structure. I don't mean to put a fraternity in front of this.
You mean a building, right?
Yeah, it's how should I say this? On a Masonic level, the Masonic fraternity really operates a lot on structure.
What did you do physically? Did you build something?
The only thing I did know physically is make a deck, which is called a deck. Up north, I worked CDF wildfires and up in Humboldt and learned, how to fight fires at a young age. So decks is what we called them. And all it is a cut deck in the mountain where it's level and not at an angle. So that deck I've carved out up on the land that we have up there. It's all corporate, nonprofit, and our intent is just simply to build 2 U-shaped walls, cinder block walls, two little cabins, but there are only 3 walls to them, and that way there's it's an open roof, open ceiling, and we could go up there and arrange meetings and whatnot there on that land. And so what we'd like to do really is bring back a cultural meeting that we used to have here in the Antelope Valley that hasn't happened in quite a while now. And this cultural gathering involved a drumming and a lot of the local natives in this area. And so what we wanted to do is, have a new spot for us to be able to meet and have our drummings again.
Gotcha.
And start being able to do our songs. So, I've joined in with these gatherings, and they're quite important, especially when it comes to powwows, like the Chumash in Malibu with their powwow and whatnot. The powwows are ever so important. Because of this pandemic, unfortunately, it's really put a lot of things off, and it's taken a lot of people.
Yeah. So what you're saying is this place, this rock art site that you're protecting, will also become some sort of a gathering site for Native people to perform certain religious rites. Am I correct?
Exactly. Again, I don't want to, name any names of organizations or whatnot without their permission, but this particular gathering, in fact, one of our directors, on board here with the corporation, CM, he was with that group as well. That's how I know CM, or CFO.
Yeah,
is in that drumming. So he's a part of it as well as with us trying to bring back the group that we used to be, drumming together with the drum and the ladies in the background with the children singing and with the whole room singing to the same song, drumming on the same drum, like it was one heartbeat. The heartbeat of the world, and it really is quite an extraordinary feeling to be able to be part of.
Oh, I bet it is. It's absolutely incredible. I'm getting a flavor for what we're doing, what you're doing, and what we're trying to accomplish. And I think in the final, segment, maybe we should focus in on a little bit about the rock art site itself and its characteristics. See you in the flip-flop, gang.
What do you use for appointment and task scheduling? I used to constantly move things around in my calendar that were just tasks I needed to do in favor of meetings. Now I let an intelligent AI do that with Motion. In Motion, all I have to do is create tasks with a soft or hard deadline, state how long I think it will take, and whether it can be broken up, and Motion does the rest. It puts the task where it's a best fit for me getting it done by the deadline. The scheduler then puts appointments with people wherever they schedule and moves the tasks around them. Support the APN with a little kickback if you sign up, and try Motion for free at www.archpodnet.com/motion. That's archpodnet.com/motion.
Did you know we have lots of great shows on the Archaeology Podcast Network? Head over to ArchPodNet.com and you can see all the shows that are currently producing podcasts. Scroll down a bit more and you'll see some great shows from the past that still have great content. Search for your favorite shows on your podcasting app or listen right on the page at ArchPodNet.com.
Hey out there in Rock Art Podcast Land, this is your host, Dr. Alan Garfinkel, with Joseph Williams, our guest scholar of the Seven Fires Corporation, talking about the manner in which you might try to protect, respect, and conserve a sacred site, and one which is also a prominently important rock art site. And this is the third segment, and so we're going to really drill down to the rock art site itself. So, Joseph Williams, can you paint us a word picture of what this rock art site is all about and why it might be so important in a general way?
In my opinion, it would be the most extraordinary, largest panel there is that I've known and learned to study that's as elaborate as it is.
And when you say panel, what kind of a site is this? Is it a painting site? Is it a drawing site? What is it?
It's a pictograph site, painting site, if you will. Okay. Pictographs, and it's got anthropomorphic figures. One of those figures called the teddy bear image. or the teddy bear man, if you will, or the teddy bear painting, which is one of the catchy phrases.
Yeah, I know. Is it monochrome, a single color, or is it many colors?
Monochrome, actually, that I happen to notice for the most part.
Okay.
I'd want to say two more than one color.
Okay.
Mainly because, if you want to consider white a color, it's more of a shade. But, the black and white, as far as shades are concerned, as opposed to colors.
Right.
Colors itself, I'd say the only color that I've been able to actually see or recognize is the color red.
So it's black, white, and red.
Right.
And I have never been there, I have to say honestly. I've probably written something about it in several different contexts, always as a synthesis or a summary of previous research. Also in the in the handbook of the Kwaisu, and also in sort of an overview in the Fence Post, there was an article that I put together as well.
Yes. As a matter of fact, yes, you have me there. It's polychromatic paintings. Is what they're considered. So when it comes to the rarity of the type of pictographs that these are, it's actually quite rare, actually, as opposed to pictographs that are picked. So the paintings, as opposed to pictographs, are quite different.
Yeah,
and I've learned to study these. So
how big is the panel? How tall? How wide?
I'd say that altogether, as far as the panel itself, I'd say it wouldn't be more than maybe like a 6x6 or maybe 8x8. But how high up on the rock that it is, I'd probably want to put it more up there, about 8 to 10 feet. In height from where you stand. So
it's prominently placed in sort of an elevated position, correct?
Right, and there's a lot of things about that canyon on the whole when it comes to on the environmental aspects of it. When the creek is running, like right now, we've had such bad weather regarding rain, being here in the midst of this drought for as many years as we've had. The creek back there isn't running; it's dry right now. So, but when we do have any form of close to regular weather, the springs are alive back there, and that fresh water that's running as creeks through that canyon. I've actually come to realize there are some rare amphibious frogs. There's amphibians that grow in, that are alive, and yet if you went back in that canyon right now, you'd find it dry as a bone. So it's quite a mystery, actually, to see the canyon come alive with the fresh water, even with
I'm sure, absolutely,
all the amphibians. I think I've actually discovered a couple of artesian wells there. That's all.
Wow. Well, I have an anecdotal story about that site that I've talked about in an article. You want to hear it?
Yes, absolutely.
There's a gentleman by the name of Jack Sprague, and he's I'd say, renowned student of rock art throughout Kern County. And he helped put together the rock art section in the handbook of the Kwaisu. And his wife's name is Gail Sprague, and she was an archaeologist who got her master's degree from Cal State Bakersfield. And she is rather familiar with this site that we're talking about. And I called her for some reason, or we were talking for some reason. I was talking about what I knew about it, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, "Did you see the bear?" And I said, "Oh, yeah. I've seen that teddy bear image we talk about, or that small little spirit figure that looks rather like some sort of a small bear." She goes, "No. Did you see the bear?" I go, "Well, yeah, I know that there's, zoomorphs, zoomorphic figures that are bears. And we see him at other sites like at Tomokani itself, Tomokani State Historic Park. She goes, "Alan, did you see the bear?" I go, "Gail, what are you talking about?" Says, "The rock itself is shaped like a bear."
Yes,
I go,
actually.
"Oh, really?" And I said, "That's rather striking, isn't it?" And she sent me photographs of that. And damn, Daniel, it looks just like the visage, the profile of a bear, the nose, the body, etc. Doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, it does. And that's one of the things I happen to notice, having been born here in the Antelope Valley. Like, for example, Saddleback Butte, it's the shape of the saddle, so a lot of
Yeah.
these rocks and places, even in Tomokani, when you go walking on the trails there in Tomokani State Park, you'll find these areas where it looks ever so much like some form of an animal or being, these forms of rock, but you have to
Definitely.
be facing them. You have to be facing them a certain way to see them, and actually in that particular configuration. And so that's one thing I've learned.
So one of the things,
things.
one of the things, again, just like with Tomokani and with the resource we're talking about, I think in the broad patterning of rock art sites, sometimes, even I'd say somewhat frequently, you will find that sites that have some sort of special form akin to an animal will be the sites for emblazoning, setting up the rock art, both pictographs and petroglyphs. Have you found that?
Yes, as far as that is concerned, being able to recognize these forms, they're considered gifts. I mean, from a native for me.
Absolutely.
It's like an eagle feather, finding an eagle feather on your trail.
It's gifts from the Creator. Exactly.
Yeah, if anybody even
the
knew
rocks are
how
alive,
important an
sentient.
eagle feather is. Exactly. So that's what I learned.
Yeah. So being a Native American, I didn't mean to get into this subject, but you're kind of alluding to it. Being a Native person, and given your understanding, what makes rock art important? What is it about rock art, or what do Native people believe about rock art?
Well, it's the spirit of the person or the family, for the most part, that puts themselves into these areas, and they put themselves into these areas by making a form or a painting or an etching like a pictograph. And these areas are ever so special for centuries, if not millennia, to the families that are the product of these areas. They learn by the same legends that's been told to them. And so these areas, they start to become these areas for gathering, for storytelling. And so a lot of times these paintings from a native perspective, my perspective, I have a different perspective as a Cherokee, because as for the Cherokee Nation, as far as the Cherokee Nation is concerned, they have their story to tell as well.
Sure.
And so, when you learn about the hardships that the natives of this nation have actually been through, the hardships, that makes these places even more important. That these places are left as a remembrance of this time period. And so it's like these spaces and places that are frozen in time, that you can go and walk into and learn about. But when you walk into with the respect of learning of that culture, of learning of that spirit that built the place in the first place. So that's what's interesting.
Very
This
interesting.
particular place, I guess, was naturally made. So it wasn't actually, made as far as by hand, like any like a mesa building or any brick building or anything like that. This is a natural place that was made most likely by geology, just simple geophysics, that allowed it to become what it is, and that's a very large rock. And I believe that's the same in the case of Tomokani.
Sure.
We have these very large
Absolutely.
rocks. So, these are the places. This is actually, in my opinion, I don't mean to use the term end of the trail when it comes to that from a Cherokee perspective, but the trail is what really these paintings I've learned are all about, is the trail that comes all the way from the Yucatan Peninsula and the trail that winds all the way up through Baja California and up here. This is like almost the end of the trail.
So there's an interconnection between the various Indian groups and what they believe in terms of the thread that connects people, cultures, places, etc. Now,
it was a trail. It was an actual trail.
Yeah, right. I want to mention a couple of things, though, before we close here very shortly. That Sandy Rogers, and also a native Owens Valley Paiute, wrote an article about rock art sites as storyboards. And that was one of the things you mentioned, that these are images sometimes. They're documentation of the stories, the key stories for Native people.
Yes.
They can be creation stories. They can be sacred narrative. We use the term mythology. I don't like that, but you know what I'm talking about.
Right, exactly. And like, for example, this particular site that we're speaking of, has been studied to the point, and from what I can see as an interpretation, as this was like turned into from a milling station, a milling area for the families that live there, to a hunting lodge. And so a lot of the paintings are in regards to hunts. So this was a very important part of going on a hunt. So when the hunter, he put his painting up, that was his mark for successful hunt for the most part.
The other two items before we close, I've only got about 2 minutes, and I want to give you the last minute or so to close on your own, is that there's a couple of terms that I use when I talk about rock art sites. One is I call them memory palaces and places of personal immortality. And those were the concepts, those were the word pictures that I think I got when you were explaining some of this. Does that make any sense?
Yes, absolutely. I'd have to agree with you, Doctor, completely, especially on the latter. On the latter, that's for sure. When it comes to immortality, mainly because this is a painting that's been deemed to be over 2,000 years old, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure on record what painting around is even 2,000 years old. That you can see.
Exactly.
So it's quite amazing to see how well preserved it is.
It is, very much so. So if you were to close and tell our audience something that you think is a key takeaway or a sign off, something that they should learn or understand.
I think the key, when I was younger, there was this book I remember reading. It's called Walking Softly in the Forest. And it was a way, I think, of for, scouts, Boy Scouts, that kind of thing, to learn how to hike and whatnot in the woods and walk softly without disturbing what's around and keeping everything preserved. So, nativesteps.org is a website that I've just put up that we are just now constructing and trying to figure out how to publish. And nativesteps.org, native steps meaning just like in those walking softly in the forest steps, to take those steps ever so softly and understand.
Definitely. I get your drift. Joseph, it was an absolute honor and privilege to have you on the Rock Art Podcast for our 87th episode.
Thank you. There's definitely things that's worth more than money, that's for sure. And this to me is worth way more than the dollar bill, and that's mainly why I'm involved.
Mainly your motivation. I got you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in on the Rock Art Podcast. See you in the flip-flop, gang.
Thanks for listening to the Rock Art Podcast with Dr. Alan Garfinkel and Chris Webster. Find show notes and contact information at www.archpodnet.com/rockart. Thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing this podcast with your family and friends. This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Cultural Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
This is Chris Webster, founder of the APN and one of the chief editors. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. If you want to keep the conversation going and support us along the way, go to archpodnet.com/members. That's archpodnet.com/members. And thanks for listening.
Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.